Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're jumping straight into a topic that honestly touches millions of lives, yet it's still so often wrapped up in silence and heavy stigma. We're going to unpack the very human, very complex journey of substance use, addiction, and the incredible, science-backed reality of recovery. And we're framing this whole exploration around the Nasha Mukt Bharat Abhiyan, which is India's massive nationwide movement focused on prevention and community support. Let's really look past the judgment here and try to understand the actual biology and psychology behind addiction.
Picture this, a teenager accepting a cigarette just to fit in with the crowd, a college student drinking to numb the crushing weight of exam stress, a young professional using alcohol to escape the quiet, heavy feeling of loneliness, or a worried parent pacing the floor, just waiting for their kid to come home. Nobody wakes up one morning and plans to become addicted. Most people are literally just searching for acceptance, a quick relief from overwhelming stress, an escape from emotional pain, or they're just acting on basic human curiosity. So you gotta wonder, how exactly does that occasional, innocent-seeming use morph into a full-blown addiction? Why does the human brain so fiercely keep asking for more, even when a person knows it's causing them harm? And most importantly, can recovery actually happen? To answer this, we really need to look at the hard science of addiction, alongside the core philosophy of the Nasha Mukt Bharat Abhiyan, a movement that is deeply rooted in prevention and, above all, hope.
Right, so substance use isn't a light switch. It doesn't just flip on overnight. It's a gradual continuum. It starts at step 1, casual or experimental use. This is infrequent. It's driven by social motives or curiosity, and the person feels totally in control. But then it can slip into step 2, habitual use. This is where psychological dependence starts creeping in. The substance gets tied to daily routines, like needing a drink to unwind after work. Finally, we hit step 3, addiction or substance use disorder. This is a severe biopsychosocial condition characterized by intense cravings, loss of control, and continued use despite obvious serious harm. Now, this perfectly explains why adolescents and young adults are incredibly vulnerable. In a developing brain, the reward system, which is all about craving novelty, pleasure, excitement, and peer approval, matures way earlier than the prefrontal cortex. Think of your prefrontal cortex as the brain's braking system. It handles judgment, impulse control, and long-term planning. Because the gas pedal of the reward system is fully active well before the brakes of the prefrontal cortex are installed, young people are biologically wired to take risks and really underestimate consequences. To understand the why of addiction, we have to talk about neurotransmitters. When someone consumes alcohol, drugs, or even smokes, it triggers a massive, unnatural flood of a chemical called dopamine. Now, dopamine isn't just about feeling good. It's heavily involved in motivation, reinforcement, and learning. When these massive dopamine spikes happen, the brain's reward pathway basically writes down a very dangerous equation. It learns, hey, substance equals pleasure. Therefore, I must repeat this behavior to survive. And that dopamine flood, it builds into a dangerous trap known as tolerance. Our brains are highly adaptive. With repeated exposure to these dopamine spikes, the brain actually numbs its own receptors to protect itself. So suddenly, that original amount of a substance doesn't give you the same effect. You're forced to consume more, stronger drinks, higher doses, just to chase that initial kick. As this tolerance builds, intense cravings absolutely hijack the brain, fiercely linking the substance to specific people, places, or even passing emotions. Have you ever heard someone say, "I can stop anytime," or "I only drink socially," or "I just need it to relax"? These are classic cognitive distortions. Addiction is sustained by these mental tricks and by something called negative reinforcement. This is absolutely crucial to understand. Eventually, people in the grip of addiction aren't using substances to feel high anymore. They're using them simply to avoid feeling bad. They're trying to temporarily escape crushing anxiety, stress, or the agonizing physical symptoms of withdrawal. The consequences of this cycle cascade through literally every single part of a person's life, and the toll is devastating. Physically, we're talking organ damage like severe lung and liver disease and incredibly high overdose risks. Psychologically, it breeds intense anxiety, deep depression, and suicidal thoughts. And socially, it just causes heartbreak, family conflicts, lost jobs, massive financial strain, and profound isolation. It's an incredibly heavy burden to carry. Section 1, the path forward, de-addiction and recovery. Because addiction is not a moral failing. It's a complex condition, and recovery is absolutely possible through continuous learning and building new routines. Counseling is the absolute foundation here. Psychoeducation teaches the individual and their family exactly how addiction hijacked the brain. Motivational interviewing helps spark the internal desire to change when someone is stuck in denial. Cognitive behavior therapy, or CBT, is a total game changer for identifying those unhealthy thoughts and managing cravings. And family therapy is crucial for rebuilding broken trust and removing toxic blame.
A big part of this is knowing what level of care is actually needed. Like, when does talking it at work and when do doctors need to step in? Well, counseling alone is incredibly effective for early stage or mild use, especially if the person is highly motivated and their daily life is still functioning. But when someone has severe physical dependence, high risks of dangerous withdrawal, or psychosis, medical intervention, like supervised detox and medication, isn't just helpful, it is absolutely life-saving. The very best outcomes happen when medical care and counseling work together.
Now, there is a vital mental shift we need to make as a society. Relapse should not be viewed as a failure. The journey of recovery is rarely a perfectly straight line. Stress, tough emotions, or unexpectedly bumping into old triggers can cause a relapse. It's simply a signal that the recovery strategies need a bit of tweaking and strengthening. It's not a reason to give up. With supportive families who just listen without judgment, that resilience can be rebuilt immediately. Sustaining recovery long-term requires building a specific kind of psychological muscle, specifically a trait called conscientiousness. By actively building self-discipline, taking real responsibility, planning out their days, and practicing delayed gratification, individuals can fundamentally rewire their habits. And this isn't something you're just born with, right? Conscientiousness can be developed and strengthened over time through persistence and structured routines, which helps people resist those sudden impulses. So how do we stop this cycle before it even starts? How do we proactively guide our youth? Let's be real, fear-based lectures just do not work. What actually works is connection. We have to protect our kids by building open communication and deep, genuine trust. We need to teach them how to actually refuse peer pressure. We need to give them opportunities in sports, arts, and hobbies so they find a strong sense of belonging. They need healthier tools to manage life's challenges, backed by real mental health education. I want to leave you with this core message. Addiction can happen to anyone, but recovery is possible for everyone. Awareness, compassion, scientific understanding, and timely support can help us build a healthier, happier, and truly Nasha Mukt Bharat. A drug-free India doesn't start with punishment or moral policing. It begins with our collective responsibility to replace societal stigma with scientific empathy, ensuring that early intervention is there for those who need it most.
We all have a role to play in this nationwide movement. Nasha Mukt Bharat Abhiyan. Say no to substance abuse. Say yes to health, hope, and life. So as we wrap up this explainer, I'll leave you with this one question to think about. What is one small step you can take today, in your own family or community, to replace the stigma of addiction with the science of empathy? Thanks for joining me.